I just recently posted a video about being conservative with your energy and being aware to not expend it and waste it on meaningless things in order for you to have saved up energy to use for meaningful and purposeful things. And the point was that energy is one. You have your energy, the energy you have built up inside you is only one, and you choose whatever form you give to it. You could choose to give it the form of purpose, meaningful act, or you choose to give it the form of meaningless wastefulness, coping mechanism kind of activities. So it's not like you have a set of some energy for meaningful for working on your purpose, and then another part of your energy is for working on pleasure and seeking pleasure. But in the end, it's all just one energy, and you choose the form you give to it. And depending on your connectedness to source, to oneness, to truth, to nature, to unity, to your infinite, that determines the levels of energy you've got. And from time to time, you would get surges in these levels of energy that if you're connected, or if you just suddenly you got into that sweet spot in which you opened yourself to receiving more energy, you get that sudden inspiration and intuition and motivation to work on something. And I realized when I got in that space, and I chose to postpone it, I chose to delay working on that thing that suddenly got inspired within me, that something that fired a passion within me. But then because I felt excited, and then I chose to invest that energy surge that I've got into something else. Like now I was in the mood to hang out with friends, or I'm in the mood to watch a movie. I found that when I got back to working on the original thing that fired this energy within me, I wasn't as much passionate, or I wasn't any more passionate or inspired or that motivated to work on it. And that triggered the last video about how to be conservative with your energy. But I realized after finishing the video is that I missed out on a very important point, and that is how to avoid burnout. Because if you're always just so focused on purpose and meaningful, and especially if you're starting out if you're first starting out with working on something new that you're passionate about, and maybe you feel it's your purpose, it's getting you closer to your infinite potential, it's putting you in the realm of infinite possibilities. When you're first starting out, it's not yet habitualized, it's not yet part of you, it's not yet reinforced within your subconscious. So if you're just trying to force your way by working on it over and over obsessively, you could experience burnout. And burnout is a bad thing because it comes back and bite you. If you're not careful with how you're working with that energy, this burnout, it comes back around, and it just drives you backwards several steps of what you have managed to move forward. Because when it comes, and if you reach to the point of burnout, then you just cope with procrastination, because procrastination in a sense is a sort of coping mechanism. And then you just you reach to the end of your energy supply, and you feel completely drained, and then you sit back, and then you give up a big part of your intention, of your drive, and then you lose the momentum. And once you lose the momentum, if you had been avoiding burnout, you could take a 1 day break, and then you come back the next day, and the momentum is still there, although it's not as much as if you would have been working on it day after day, day in, day out, day after day. But still, it's not gone, the momentum is still there. But rather, if you reach to the point of burnout, you could take 3 days break, you could take a whole week of break, and then when you come back, the momentum is almost completely lost. And then you find yourself unwilling and reluctant, and it feels like starting all over from the beginning, and then that thing becomes chores again and again. So you have to be very attentive to that and careful with that, especially when you're first starting out. Because you don't really see hyper successful people now when they're already in their hyper successful state wasting their time and spending their energy on, you know, just hanging out aimlessly. Or you don't hear those kind of stories, you don't see them, you don't see a hyper successful person saying that they are obsessed with just, you know, playing video games or staying in bed the whole day or just watching movies or procrastinating to cope and escape. But to them it's almost got habitualized, and they're at a stage where maybe they just can handle it. And that really also depends on the type of person you are. So back to the point, now how do you avoid burnout and at the same time you keep that momentum going? Because if you're not avoiding burnout, if you're avoiding burnout by actually obsessively indulging in high instant pleasure experiences, then you are going to lose that momentum. Because even for one day, if you see that thing with energy is that once you give it lots of momentum towards one direction, such as a high instant pleasure experience, that reflects on your energy and it reflects on your physiology, your neurological system, because then you kind of rewire your dopamine. You mess up with your dopamine system, and now the baseline of your dopamine is somewhere else. And then when you go back the next day to working on your passion, on your purpose, on this meaningful thing, you don't find yourself any longer that motivated. You feel as if you're forcing your way through it, and it's chores now, and you just want to stand up and you want to go out and do something else. You want to go back to those high dopamine experiences, high dopamine pleasure. And so you're going to be in that down phase, in that down feeling down for the whole day. And then if you actually act upon that dopamine calling, then you're just going to go backwards in momentum instead of moving forward with your momentum. And so it has to be a balance. It has to be a smart way. There should be a smart way about it, and not just aimlessly, avoiding burnout by just binge watching and binge eating and indulging in all those highly addictive habits, all for 1 or 2 or 3 days, and just leaving out your purpose for that long. And so the point here, the key to being in balance, the key secret to how to avoid burnout without losing momentum, is to actually use your coping mechanisms in your favor. And that's actually a very interesting thing, that once you get the hang of it, it becomes a beautiful thing. It becomes, your whole life becomes meaningful. Everything, every little step in your life is meaningful and purposeful. And what I mean by using your coping mechanisms in your favor is that, for example, regardless of your coping mechanism, let's say it's procrastination. For now, we'll take this as an example, as the first example. And the way you cope is that by just, staying in bed all day, holding your phone and just binge watching shorts or reels on social media, and, or binge watching series or whatever. But just, it's procrastinating. You're fearful of the outcome. You're too attached to the outcome. You're fearing to fail, and so you choose to procrastinate. What if it's not that good? What if it's not perfect? What if I don't do the task the right way I should? And then just, you've reached that point of burnout. There's no more the momentum. You don't have that energy surges within you. So you start getting all of those ideas. Your body's trying to go back into programming, into its old habits, and to the old habits that makes it feel comfortable and safe and, in its zone, basically. And so you procrastinate. If that's your way of coping, for example, then sure, go for it. But there's one catch here, is to do it in nature. Go out and procrastinate. Don't stay in, and if your way of doing it is just staying in bed all day and, with your phone, with the internet, or with doing nothing, just staying and having all of these negative ideas in bed, then go out in nature, go to a park and sit there. Even if you want to binge watch there, even if you want to be on social media while you're out there in nature, at least you're getting the energy back in nature. At least you're grounded. And when you go out in nature, it's one way to actually elevate your energy. It's already by itself one way to raise your vibration and your frequency. So when you're out there, you feel this, it gives you that grandiose nature of how, life is still beautiful. Life is beautiful regardless. You are connected. You feel connected. You're not pushing yourself into this connection completely by just, staying in a dark, coveted room on your phone in an alternate reality all day. But actually you're out there, you're regaining, although you're procrastinating, but you're avoiding this complete drainage of energy and fallback of momentum, because at the same time you're coping, you're taking in energy, you're receiving energy from your environment, and maybe you could see something. Maybe there's infinite possibilities when you're out there. When you're in there, when you're in your room just stuck in bed all day, you know how it ends, you know how it begins, you know how it ends, you know how it is, what it leads to, where it comes from, everything about it. There's nothing new. There's no space for any potential. There's no potential. There's no possibilities. It just have one outcome and one way it's going to go. So when you're out there, there is, maybe you see someone doing something and then it inspires you. It reignites that passion. Or maybe you're just sitting there and then you're inspired by the beauty around you, so you just leave your phone and you don't feel as if you need to cope anymore, and you're just inspired and you're just sitting there in awe, in peace. And in turn, this gives you back that surge of energy, that momentum. Or if your way is hanging out of coping is, for example, hanging out with friends, going out to drink, or playing games together or whatever, at least make it meaningful. And so that everything is going to be meaningful, make sure to do it with the right people. Go out and hang out with the right type of friends, not just aimless hanging out and, with lots of negative energy, gossiping and, talking bad about others, or just complaining about life, or just, no, make an intention to have conscious positivity, that you are trying to look at the best in everything. And so when you're with a friend, try to make it meaningful, try to have meaningful conversations, try ask them about something that you've been struggling with in your pursuit of passion, or with what you're working on, this purposeful thing you're working on. Try and ask them and see where the conversation leads to. But at least as long as you set the intention that I'm not escaping, I'm not using this to escape, I'm not using this to cope, I'm using this to recollect my energy, I'm using this as a break, as a meaningful, conscious, mindful break. I'm using this to actually reclaim energy and not to waste it, and not to just escape the reality. I'm doing this to be in more connection with reality, with my truth, with myself. I'm not just coping, I'm not just escaping. There's nothing for me to fear. I'm not running away from anything. I'm just having a little nice break because I've very much earned it, and I deserve it. And it's going to make me more inspired and more passionate and more motivated. If you put this intention, regardless of what coping mechanism it is, if you don't make that attachment to if you're not doing it because you're fearful of attachment to the outcome, you're very obsessed with how you're doing things and your purposeful actions, and so you're just too burned out to even give a thought about. Don't build this negative energy about around your original pursuit. So if you set this kind of intention, with most coping mechanisms, you're not gonna lose momentum. You're going to avoid burnout, but you're not going to lose the momentum towards what you are actually working on. And so that's the beautiful thing. Everything becomes meaningful. Everything becomes purposeful. Even when I'm taking free time, when I'm just sitting there doing nothing, it's purposeful, because I'm setting the intention that this is for the highest good, that this is very much deserved, that I need this, that I'm in absolutely no need to actually just keep working on that purpose and on that goal, and to obsessively pursue it, because everything will fall in place at the very perfect time. When you have this kind of trust, when you build this kind of mindset and mentality, then everything is working in your favor, even your coping mechanism. And you could take this example and apply it with whatever your coping mechanism is. Now there's plenty, but I would say something to be careful with here is to try and avoid high instant pleasure experiences, high dopamine releasing experiences, because regardless, even if you set the intention, it plays with your physiology, it plays with your neurology, with how your neural links in the brain, with how your neurological system works. And this, it plays around with your dopamine baseline, and there's almost nothing that you can do about that. If your baseline of dopamine is shifted one or two folds up, then it's going to be much more difficult to work on that thing that used to inspire you. It's not going to feel as inspiring anymore, because you've got that surge of emotions and pleasures, and then you gave that kind of activity more energy than you are willing to put on your purpose, on your passion. And so now this has more control over you. I'm speaking in energetic terms rather than physiological terms. That took more of your energy, because the more pleasure, the more passionate about something when you're doing it. And there's nothing that you could be more passionate about than high dopamine experiences, because whether you like it or not, it just controls you. Dopamine I have 2 or 3 videos about dopamine that I posted on, I think, last year, before I started redoing these kind of videos. They are gonna give you, I spoke about really in depth about dopamine and how it could be the single most controlling factor in our lives if we let it be. And so try to avoid these kind of things. Sure, cope, but let it have some sort of meaning, let it have some sort of drive, and this would be how you avoid burnout in the same time while maintaining your momentum towards your meaningful life. Thank you for tuning in to another video of Avis Conscious Frequency.